I studied sociology when I was younger.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and I remember learning about and recently reading about as well the idea of third spaces. So
Yes.
yeah, so you know we have like the first space is home, the second space is work, and then the third space traditionally was things like bars,
Mhm.
restaurants, outside hobbies like sports clubs and things like that. There's this argument now that the internet and social media in particular, and so also live streaming is slowly replacing the
Yeah.
outside world as the third space. What would you say
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's this seminal paper called about games as third places that came out 10, 15 years ago. It was written by Constance Steinkuhler and Dimitri Williams, and it was foundational in my understanding of how games are beginning to serve this kind of social function as a third space. So, I mean, absolutely. And in that paper, they lay out what Oldenburg notes is like the different qualities of third spaces. You can come and go as you please. It has its own social norms. You can be there alone together. You can just kind of sit in the space and be in the space without actively engaging. And I think you're totally right. I think that live streams would also very much fit all of those qualifications. And we do see people using them in this way. There was a paper that came out by Jan de Wit right when COVID had started about how people were using live streams to alleviate their loneliness during COVID, but were like lurking. They weren't actively interacting. They weren't active members of the community, but there was something about having it on in the background and knowing that it was live instead of recorded that gave them this sense of social comfort and being in the presence with other people, even though they weren't interacting with them.
Yeah, I found that I for my piece I've interviewed some people who are like prolific watchers of TikTok live in particular, because
Right.
that's what my article is around. And every time I ask these people like, what is it about like having this on in the background that you enjoy? And there was like, it feels like there's a conversation happening in the room that I'm not in yet, but I could jump into at any time if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I found that really interesting because that is essentially what you do. Like when I go to Starbucks and I sit there on my own with a coffee, I'm earwigging, I'm listening to other
Of
people's
course.
conversations, I'm people
Yeah.
watching, and then sometimes I might start talking to somebody. But so we are literally replicating that just online.